Here's my take on Christopher Nolan movies, along with how you should shape your expectations before watching any of his movies. But I'm gonna have to say this in the beginning. I'm honestly upset with myself as to why I realized it just now after I have watched a lot of his movies. For a long time, I have admired his masterpieces one after the other. In most of his movies I've watched, I know why I love them, I know what's fascinating about them. But in some of others, there are also his movies that I liked just because it was directed by him. I have had the fear of missing out. I thought, well, he's always been making great movies, and this one that's coming must be as just great, and Christopher Nolan has never failed me as a film director. And even if it turns out that I find myself confused or don't find the movie that great, it would have been just me that don't get it, and I will be getting it once I rewatch it several times. And that's what always happens. So that's me. That pretty much describes my relationship with Christopher Nolan movies. However, in some other times, I also have another opinion on Christopher Nolan. I thought, why do I keep giving this man a second chance to prove the greatness of his filmography? Isn't a movie an entertainment? If it's too confusing and you're having a hard time finding which part of it that's entertaining, then it's probably not an entertainment anymore. These days, you often decide whether a movie is good within the first watch or even within the first 5 to 7 minutes. If you find a movie or a series boring or too confusing within the first 5 to 7 minutes, you'd most probably skip it and scroll to find another one. Maybe Nolan is just like any other film director. He nailed it in some project and he can also fail in some of other projects. And that's true and that's fair. If you had to evaluate any project based on some quantifiable measurement like reviews and rating systems, the awards, box office for example, then yeah, obviously Christopher Nolan movies have had mixed achievements in those measurements. But then I thought of it even more. I'd had to find something in between. What is it about Christopher Nolan's filmography? There must be something consistent within the way he crafts his movies. Alright, now we're gonna have to go all the way back from the beginning. Here's my take on Christopher Nolan movies, along with how you should shape your expectations before watching any of his movies. Christopher Nolan always offers something different, that's for sure. So what you do is you expect something different is going to come. You can't just look for Christopher Nolan's upcoming movies on Google and then you find out that he's gonna make a biopic, for example. You can expect that he's gonna make it like a regular biopic. You'd have to expect something different when it comes to Christopher Nolan. That's something you'd have to always bear in mind in the first place. But yeah, I know that you know that already, and I'm going to explain even more. So, you have known all along that it's always different with Christopher Nolan. You have known that he always pushes boundaries. You have known that it's going to be mind-bending as always. But still, the moment of truth every time after you finish watching his films, you'd get a notion that, well, that's kinda too much different. I didn't even think that it's going to be like this. I was hoping to be entertained. That's probably the purpose to begin with. I guess I'll just have to watch it again. And it's suddenly going back to my previous opinion on what to expect from the entertainment industry. So maybe realizing that it's going to be different is just not enough to manage your expectations when it comes to Christopher Nolan movies. Maybe we'd better come up with a different approach. Having said that, you might realize that Christopher Nolan's filmography consists of a bunch of different genres of movies. From psychological thrillers, psychological crime, superhero, heist, science fiction, historical war, spy, biography, up until epic or fantasy adventure. From there we know that Nolan is not that type of director who specializes in one genre. Across all his filmography, he always explores different genres and always tries to make it different. Well, at this point, I would just say that being different and pushing boundaries are what define his filmography. What I'm saying though is that understanding Nolan's films is different from understanding Nolan himself. Because who Nolan is just someone who always offers something different. And it's just who he is. But understanding his films, on the other hand, might take some more effort. Let's take an example of Nolan's films that seems to spark disappointments among a lot of fans. The one that seems to polarize audiences into either loving it or detesting it. Tenet. So, Tenet is basically a sci-fi action spy thriller film, if you really had to categorize it. But it's not like any other movies ever made before that fall within that category of genre. And again, it's just Nolan being Nolan, isn't it? He's made it differently. There should be no surprise in that sense. I myself fell within the group of people who found it too difficult to love as a movie. The story didn't resonate with me, the idea was too complicated to grasp. I had to watch it several times, and guess what? Now I know why. It was because I wasn't familiar enough with the genre. It was because I didn't master the genre. I didn't watch a lot of movies similar to Tenet back then, so I wasn't ready to watch it. I realized what the phrase different level means.
This is another level.
Tenet is just so far at the higher level so that you need to be ready if you want to be able to enjoy it. You can't fully appreciate Nolan's next level filmmaking unless you've already become familiar and maybe even bored with more conventional films of the same genre. Just like when you wouldn't be able to enjoy modern art if you haven't been exposed to or bored with the previous era of art, you might not appreciate modern art unless you've already seen enough classical or traditional art to understand what modern art is reacting against. You need to know what came before in order to appreciate what makes it different. You wouldn't realize the genius of this art if you're still in the stage of enjoying this art, if you know what I mean. I realize now that you don't have to watch Christopher Nolan's previous films to get ready for his upcoming films, because it's gonna be useless, because his previous films are probably completely different kind of films compared to the upcoming one. But you need to watch a lot of movies like it, the ones with the same genre, and you will have to understand the formula, the flaws, and then you'll have to be bored and you'll want something new, something different. Then you will be ready to watch Nolan's films. So in order to be ready to watch Oppenheimer, for example, you probably need to be bored with the biopic genre in the first place. You'd have to be someone who couldn't enjoy it anymore and expect something new and something different because you're so bored and tired and fed up with these typical movies with the typical formula.
And this is where the concept of a biopic fails you completely as a genre. It's not a useful genre. I love working in useful genres. For me, with this film, the heist film as applied to the Manhattan Project, the courtroom drama as applied to the security hearings, it's very useful to look at the conventions of those genres and how they can pull the audience, how they can give me communication with the audience.
And that's how you anticipate Christopher Nolan's movies. That's how you put yourself in the shoes of Christopher Nolan. That's the way you could enjoy Nolan's masterpieces on the first watch. You equip yourself with enough grasp on the genre and you try to use that to generate your own expectations. Hence, if you couldn't enjoy Nolan's films on the first watch, that's probably because you were not ready enough. Lastly, I think Nolan is just someone who got bored with the usual formula, and instead of looking for something new to watch, he had the skills to make it himself. I imagine him pondering, I'll just be the change I wish to see in the cinema, and that's exactly what he's done. Maybe that's the secret. Nolan doesn't make movies to fit into genres, he makes them to break free from the boundaries of genres. And if we want to truly enjoy his work, we have to be willing to escape with him. So, what do you think? Do you agree with me, or have you tried this approach already? If so, please do tell me whether it worked. And now you tell me, fellow Nolan fans, to prepare for his upcoming film, The Odyssey, what movies do you think we should be watching first?